Those of you that have been on my channel recently will probably know that I love Save Our Ship 2. It's probably my favourite ever mod for Rimworld. It's amazing and I love the way that the gameplay is inherently different from Rimworld, whilst also staying true to the authentic story generator experience provided by Tynan and Ludion. So when I found today's mod, and I was very nicely tagged in it by one of the mod creators as well, and I worked out what the mod actually was, I realised that this was another experience just like with Save Our Ship 2. It inherently changed the gameplay whilst also staying true to the authentic experience intended by Ludion and Tynan. Introducing the Ancient Urban Ruins mod. For those of you that love Rimworld and also love Escape from Tarkov, this is the perfect combination for you. A mod that inherently changes the gameplay of Rimworld whilst providing a unique and fresh, replayable experience. So let's get into things and start with the content. So let's start by looking at the Steam Workshop page. What is there and what do we see? So we start off with the initial thumbnail here and we can really see the inspiration from Escape from Tarkov here. We have some other pictures as well showing what things look like in game, which is a really nice show off for the mod. Going into the bulk of things, we have the content. Bit of bounce there, probably needs fixing there, and then we have pictures of everything that's been added by this mod with brief descriptions of what's going on, a description of all the areas that we can visit, or some of the new loot that we can get as well, and the ways that we can access them. I will say, whilst this does look like a really good Steam Workshop page with descriptions and pictures and everything that we could ask for, this doesn't actually list all the content that's in this mod. There is a lot of content that's been missed out on of being mentioned at all within this Steam Workshop page. This wasn't a big thing and I was pleasantly surprised when I loaded into the game, but maybe a mention of some of the other hundreds of items that have been added would be really nice. But overall, otherwise, a really good Steam Workshop page. So let's look at what the content looks like in game. Now, if we base the content of what we saw exactly in the Steam Workshop page, there's just going to be some maps here for us to visit, and that's about it. But no, there is a lot that's been added by this mod. These are all the items that have been added here. We have a huge range of items here, and I genuinely don't think I've actually been able to spawn all of them in. I went through and I did my best to find all the items, but every time I looked into something, I found another item that was completely unique. I've done my best here to spawn every single item here, but there are so many more that I've probably missed. I've not experienced a mod with this many items since Save Our Ship 2, and it'll be something that I regularly compare this mod to throughout this review. This is like Save Our Ship 2 levels of detail and content here. It's genuinely amazing and just it's almost shocking at how much has been provided here for free. It's amazing. So going through just a sample of some of the items added by this mod, we have brand new floor decals that we have access to, a brand new power source in this small chem fuel generator. We have access to a new dining chair, which is honestly a very nice addition as well. We have access to a brand new production bench in order to access all of the new weapons that have been added by this mod. We have new armor sets, we have new bionics, we have over 20 brand new weapons, we have new components in order to make the new weapons, a new material to make even more clothes with. We have access to new mechanics in order to access brand new maps, and we have well over 20, if not 30, if not 40 new items that we can loot from various maps that we visit. This isn't including all of the other custom props, the custom bags, the custom storage containers, just to access all the new items that have been added by this mod. There is so much that I haven't been able to show because I've either been too confused as to what I've already spawned in or not, and there's so much. There is so much, but in a good way, and I will stress that. Unlike many other mods that I've reviewed before where there's been too much content and it hasn't really worked, this is a lot of loot and a lot of items that have been added in a good way, and we'll go into that more throughout this video. So far, all I've done is kind of say that this mod is kind of like Escape from Tarkov, in a sense that we pick some loot, we go into a raid, we come out of that raid with loot, and then we sell things and we make things and do all that. I've never played Escape from Tarkov, so I'm kind of making things up here. This kind of works the same. With this mod, we've been given two brand new scenarios. We have one scenario that gives us access to just one colonist and a small base, and another one that's been given us access to 3 colonists and another small base. Going into the first scenario, we've got 1 colonist and we get spawned into 1 individual base. Here we have access to the brand new elevator feature where we can go up and down in levels and access a small new map. With this one, we're given access to a small little base here, and if I use the defog feature, which we'll be using very often throughout this review, we can see this nice little base that's been set up for us. This also gives us access to the trader brokerage system, which gives us access to all of the items added by this mod, and it's a very unique thing for this start. This start gives us kind of the escape from Tarkov experience. One colonist that we can loot up, and we go into raids and have the risk reward of either losing this colonist or coming out of it with some really nice loot. The second scenario gives us more of an easy access version of this mod and gives us kind of the taste of what this mod provides and how hard we want to make it. With this, we get our 3 brand new colonists, and what we do is we get given access to this nice little base. Here we have some areas that we can loot, some cardboard boxes, backpacks, things like that, a little taster of what we can get. We also get access to an underground car park, which is very nice because it's compatible with Vanilla Vehicles Expanded. Once we enter this little car park here, it throws us straight into what this mod provides. There is a nice big area here, extremely well detailed, and we get to fight shamblers, insects, and this is exactly what this mod does. It throws us into a little area here that we can fight enemies and get loot out of. All of this is obviously very risk reward, and for this scenario we also then permanently get to keep a car park which we can then live in, and it's just great because we have this very safe area that we can put all our colonists, put all our animals, put all of our things in. This one is a very nice start as well. So when it comes to actually going on a raid, how are we going to access this? So generally speaking, unless you go for the specific scenario that gives you access to an ancient logistics terminal, you're going to be totally reliant on getting these from random quests, and if you're very lucky, you can find some ancient maps and things to go off to these new areas. What I've done for the sake of testing is I've spawned in an absolute shed load of silver, and I've spawned in several ancient logistics terminal, and what I'm going to be doing is using all this silver to trade with these ancient logistics terminals, get ourselves some maps, get ourselves some information so we can find these areas for us to loot and explore. So what I've done is I've spent loads of money and we have some maps. We're going to read these maps and it's going to give us access to several locations that we can go and loot. So we have access that we can loot the mall, we can loot a construction site, we can loot a storage facility, we can loot supermarkets, we can loot commercial areas and bunkers and things like that. But we have to be able to access the quest either randomly or through these individual map pieces. Unfortunately, I was unable to find the metro station one. Not sure if there's a spawn issue here or something, but out of all of these quests that I loaded up and all of these maps that I read, and as you can see, there's quite a few here, I was unable to find the metro, which was definitely a shame. So the first one we're going to look at is the construction site. We go into the map on this one and we have a nice little area here with one enemy. Now usually there'd probably be more, but we've only got one on this occasion. We have some spots for us to loot, we can go through, grab some stuff. We also have access to one of these elevators and we can go underground and we have access to this bunker. In this bunker we have friendlies, we have enemies, we have insects, we have shamblers, a real kind of risk reward for what we want to risk in order to get more loot. So theoretically there's going to be some bags, there's going to be scav loot, there's going to be different versions of military items down here for us to loot. There's lots of things for us to do down here. Now obviously I've cleared all of the fog away so we can see everything, but you would go into each individual room and break down doors in order to access what's in there. It's all going to be down to you as the player as to what you want to risk in this situation. The next area we're visiting is the commercial street. This one has got several different sort of shop themed buildings here and some potentially sort of livable areas. Here we have access to several more enemies here, more shamblers, and then we have some friendlies that have spawned in as well. A lot of loot on the surface here, and once again we have access to another elevator that takes us underground, gives us more access to themed shopping area here, so even more stuff that we can loot. Clothes, weapons, think some of the loot that I showed off at the beginning here of the content section, and then very interestingly there's another elevator that we can access to take us down even further to another level of this area, which gives us access to a little bunker that has even more stuff here. I don't know for sure if the further down we go the better or worse the loot is, or if it is just totally random. One of these things I would like to see a little bit of clarification on the Steam Workshop page. Next we have the ancient storage facility, and this one is absolutely huge. This is probably second to the smaller of the mall variants. There is just so much loot here. Every single building is filled to the brim with detail, different items stacked up here, there and everywhere, and this one has got an absolute shed loads of enemies here. This one is going to be very worthwhile to grab, especially if you're in a car or something from Vanilla Vehicles Expanded and you can drive through and pick up as much loot as you can carry. This one also has access to a downstairs level again, once again another bunker with even more loot, even more enemies. I'm definitely getting a feeling here that you should probably be taking at least 1 or 2 colonists here in order to get the most out of the situation for each time. So next let's look at the mall. Now this is the larger of the 2 malls, and let me tell you, this thing is intimidating. The scope of loot that's here is kind of scary. I mean, how much loot are we going to be able to get? How much are we going to risk? And how much are we actually going to be able to take home? There is so much here. And I want to state that every single bit of loot that we'll be able to get from this mall is usable. It's useful and it's going to be able to help us in our long-term goals of this mod. Experience that's provided by just this mall here totally sums up this mod. This mall is like the one from Project Zomboid, where you go in and you're not coming out unless you've absolutely obliterated thousands of zombies and you've cleared yourself a path. You need to be super secure in what you're doing and what your colonists are able to do, because you have to fight shamblers, mechanoids, you have to fight actual raiders as well. Yes, there are some friendlies, but they're not much cop, let's be fair. Obviously, once again as well, we have access to the elevator system as well, so there are 2 levels of this one mall, which provides even more loot. Whilst I understand that the vanilla vehicles expanded isn't a requirement for this mod, you should probably be running that almost 100% if you want to make the most out of what your experience is with this mod. And then lastly, let's look at the smaller of the malls. This one's a lot more manageable and a lot more easier for you to access with a hit team. There's going to be a lot of loot here that you're going to be able to carry back, but it's not going to be necessarily too dangerous for a hit squad. Now, I will say there is a kind of elevator on this map. This is accessed through a parking garage. We theoretically go down like we saw in one of the other scenarios at the beginning here, and it gives us access to a little underground garage. However, every time I accessed it, it actually completely destroyed the caravan that was on this map, and I lost the colonists. I think this bug was probably caused by the fact there was a mechanoid on top and there was some sort of clash there and it didn't know what was going on. I think that's probably a very easy fix, to just like not allow people to spawn on it. But otherwise, this is an amazing map here, and I really love the attention to detail here. So that's going to be it for the content section here, and I have barely scratched the surface. There is so much to do within this mod, and I just have run out of time to cover everything. I could probably spend tens, if not hundreds of hours off camera, off stream, and just play this mod. I've been playing this mod honestly in my free time, and I can tell you that the replayability of this is immense. The amount of stuff that's actually here means that you're going to have a unique experience every single time. The adrenaline of taking your colonists into a brand new area in order to loot it up, to get something that's rare and worth a lot of money that you can then sell, and potentially lose a colonist at the same time. It's a rush that you have just would have never felt in any of your Rimworld gameplays. It makes you attached to your colonists in such a way that you love them like a child, and when you lose them, it's sad. Usually when I play Rimworld, I just eat them. I just eat them and I don't care. But with this mod, if I've trained up a colonist that's incredibly good at melee, incredibly good at shooting, I've invested good armor in them, and I've lost them to a silly mistake, it's heartbreaking. This mod, like with the Save Our Ship 2 mod, has changed gameplay in such a way that I'm invested in my characters, I'm invested in the way I play, and it's an amazing feeling. It's given a fresh breath of life into something that just doesn't really have something like this. I didn't expect the Escape from Tarkov raid ability and things like that to work so well, and it does. It pulls it off perfectly with the perfect amount of content as well. There's no need to be running so many extra mods that it just bloats up your mod pack. This mod for content is perfect. Yes, I can argue and say that the Steam Workshop page needs to have some more additions of what's actually been added by this mod, because it was a bit of a shock when I loaded up. Yes, I could argue and say that maybe we need some more variations to the individual maps to have some more stuff going on there. So honestly, for the content section here, it's a 10 out of 10. Very easily a 10 out of 10. So next, let's move on and check out the quality of the things added by this mod. Now, when I usually review these mods and I find that a mod has got a lot of items added, I'll generally find that there are some lapses of quality here, there, everywhere. So if looking at the quality of everything that's been added by this mod, for me, is going to be really, really important that everything's had time and care and attention put into it at every stage. So let's start by going into the mall. What I'm going to be doing here is zooming in on random points and just showing you what's there. And as you can tell, every single time I zoom in, there is a detail that we've not seen before. The floor's been styled in a different way. There's a different thing for us to look at and loot. The detail of the shelves is just incredible. The attention to detail here and the way things have been placed have been given such thought and clarity behind it. Nothing's been put down randomly, and I think that's really impressive. The purpose of every single item is there. Nothing's been added to just be there for the sake of it. It's cover, it's something lootable, it's something for you to destroy to get resources. Everything has a purpose and everything is there for a reason, which is incredible. Next, let's look at all the items actually added by this mod. And as I've kind of said, there are probably hundreds of items here. But what I want to showcase here is one item to really show off the quality of this mod. We're going to zoom in on a Lego box here. The Lego boxes have been added by this mod as a lootable item that you can then sell and make money off. Zooming in on this one box of this crane, this is zoomed in with camera plus as far as we possibly can, and look at the detail here. The individual tires of the crane, there's even lighting effects on this box that's been painted on. It's incredible. The amount of attention to detail of this mod, it goes leaps and bounds beyond pretty much anything I've ever seen. I can honestly say that the quality of this mod, not necessarily because of the way it looks, but the attention to detail is better than anything I've ever seen before. I have to give credit where credit's due, and the artists that have been involved within this mod, honestly, they deserve a big kiss. They deserve a big sloppy kiss on the forehead and to be told that I'm proud of them, alright? I'm proud that I am experiencing art like this in Rimworld, and I'm happy knowing that people are putting this love and care into items like this, because it's amazing. Everything else that's been added by this mod also looks amazing. The consistency is the most important thing here for me, because everything looks like it's become part of vanilla Rimworld. Even the Coke and the Pepsi and the Sprite, like, it just looks like it's always been here. So for quality, as you can tell, I like it. I love the quality here. It's just... it's incredible. I have no words for it, because you can clearly see here, the quality is on another level. For very obvious reasons, 10 out of 10. It just couldn't score anything else. So next, let's move on and look at the balancing section of this review. Now, when I came to doing my pre-recording of this mod and I was looking at structuring the way this review was going to go, I was really worried about this section. Not because I thought this was going to be really overpowered and it was ruin my review of everything, but because there is so much here to cover in the balancing section here. I thought I was going to grow a long grey beard and I was going to get married and have kids by the time I'd finish this. So what we're going to be doing is looking at how easy it is to access the weapons added by this mod. Because all the weapons added by this mod are only crafted using the weapons components also added by this mod, it kind of sets the weapons and everything in a different category of their own. So we're going to be trying to cover as much as humanly possible in the least amount of time possible as well. So I might miss out a few things and I might miss out on something glaringly obvious at the same time, and if I have, I apologize. So let's get into things and look at how easy it is to access the weapon components. So in order to test how many weapon components that we are getting from a loot run, what I've done is I've set up a smaller of the malls. Now obviously there's going to be a hell of a lot of loot here, so generally what I'm going to be expecting here is that there's going to be a nice healthy mix between not being too many of the weapons added by this mod, some vanilla weapons, and I'm also not expecting to find too many weapon components. So what I've done here is I've downed or destroyed all the Shramblers, all of the enemy raiders, and all of the mechanoids as well. So we can have a clear run and I can just loot everything, and at the end I'll reform the caravan and we can see exactly what there is. I think what's really important to note here is that obviously every single weapon can be disassembled and made into components, and that every single component that we find can be made into weapons, all of them of varying costs, and none of them costing anything else other than the components added by this mod. So after spending about half an hour actual minutes in the game looting this mall and everything, we came to the end of my experience here and I found 3 weapon components, and that was it. I also found a lot of weapons added by this mod. What we also want to bear in mind, that obviously, is that all of these weapons can be disassembled into individual components. We also found advanced components, we have found items added by this mod to sell, we found loads of just things everywhere. So much stuff that we can make money off of, which is obviously extremely important. However, because we found so many weapons that we can then disassemble and to make weapon components, it does kind of mean that once we've raided one place, we found one weapon that we can deconstruct and make into something else, we do have access to like the best weapons almost immediately, which I personally am not a fan of. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that the weapons can be immediately disassembled into more weapon components, especially with no extra actual base game vanilla costs. So as we can kind of see, getting these weapon components are fairly easy. Now obviously we do have limitations. The more powerful weapons that are added by this mod are restricted by having specific components that we have to find. So what we're going to be looking at is all of the weapons combined and seeing which ones are going to be the easiest to access and looking at the recipes that follow. So what I've done here is downloaded the weapon stats mod. This allows me to very quickly look at what the most powerful weapons are and go from there. So firstly, let's look at the DPS. And very interestingly, the highest two weapons that we have access to are vanilla, the minigun and the chain shotgun, followed by the DT MDR. These three weapons have the highest DPS regardless of any other stat. Then if I sort things by DPS over accuracy, once again we have the chain shotgun being second, the MPX being first, and the DT MTR being third. So the assumption here is the DT MTR is the best weapon added by this mod. So like I just said, some of these weapons have special components added. So what I wanted to do was then check the recipe to see what specific components are required for this weapon. And very interestingly, looking at the recipe for this weapon, it only requires 5 weapon components. That is it. 5 weapons to find here, there, everywhere on the map is pretty easy, especially if you look back all the way at the storage raid that we went to where there were so many enemies there. Just kill 5 of them, take the weapons, off you go, and you have access to the best weapon that's added by this mod. So this kind of proves my point that I don't necessarily agree with there being purely a weapon component cost here, because 5 weapon components is pretty low, honestly, especially if we're getting maybe only 1 weapon component back every time we disassemble a weapon. It seems a little bit too easy to access. Now, I'm all for metas, and I totally understand that in Escape from Tarkov, there is definitely a meta for weapons, and I get that we need to have one in this as well in order to make it easier for the player. But only 5 weapon components, it will basically mean that any other lower tier weapon that you find will be immediately useless, because you can just craft this and it's easy peasy. So I'm not too sure on the balancing for this one, honestly. So next, let's look at the balancing of the value of the items actually added by this mod. And what I want to remind you guys before we go into this is that this mod is like Save Our Ship 2, in the sense that it totally overhauls gameplay. So the balancing of things are going to be related to the actual mod itself rather than vanilla Rimworld. So we have to take that in mind. Looking at the items that have been added, we have items added by this mod going up to the value of 10,000 silver. You find a couple of those and you are laughing. You can buy anything you want. And if you have access to an ancient logistics terminal like we have with the one scenario that gives us 1 colonists, you're going to be sitting on so much money. Now, in terms of your gameplay, this isn't going to actually make that much difference if you're using this mod, because what else are you going to have access to? Not much else, honestly. You're just going to be using the money that you get from all these items to buy more maps, more intelligence, to go on more and more raids. The amount of money you're getting isn't really relevant. What I think would be very interesting to see, if we could get some clarification by the developers here, is if we still get raided depending on wealth if we're using this mod. It's something that hasn't really come up in this review, nor in my time playing this, because I didn't really get raided. So I don't know if you have just absolutely loads of things sitting in your stockpile that's worth tens and hundreds of thousands of silver, whether or not that's affecting wealth. And I think it'd be really interesting to get some insight from the developers on that. So where am I at with the balancing of this? Throughout this section here, you're probably thinking that I'm not too impressed with the balancing. And I think comparing this to vanilla Rimworld, no, I'm not impressed with the balancing. But what we need to bear in mind, and it's something that I've tried to reinstate throughout this video, is that this mod is, to me, is like Save Our Ship 2 is. This mod completely changes gameplay in such a way that it's like almost a new game, but it stays true to the authentic Rimworld experience of connecting to your characters and creating a story. The balancing in that regard is unique to this mod. So how is this mod balanced within itself is the question that we need to be asking ourselves. And I think within the mod itself, it makes sense. The balancing is good. There's a meta that can be obviously formed with the DT MTR. Yes, you could argue that that should probably be a little bit worse, especially with how cheap it is in terms of its resources. But because this is inspired by Escape from Tarkov and games like that, there's got to be a meta, and there's got to be a way that you, the player, can get the upper hand on the pawns and the colonists, especially to get over the Rimworld BS RNG of combat. I totally appreciate that. And I think when you spin things around and look at this mod in that regard, the balancing here has been taken into account hugely. And I think it's really impressive the way that the mod creators here have really thought about this in its own unique way and given this mod the spotlight it needs and put full faith in the balancing of what they've done to just be its own thing. And I think when you look back at my section here and then think of it in the way that the mod creators have probably intended it to be, it is balanced. Like, there are very minor things we could change, but the mod is balanced in what's been intended by the mod creators here. So honestly, I'm gonna give it 10 out of 10 again. It's balanced it for its own experience, and that's perfect if you ask me. So next, let's move on to the compatibility of this mod. Are there any bugs I need to let you know about, and how this fit in with your playthroughs? Now, in terms of bugs, I did experience a couple of bugs. Obviously, I did experience the issue where my caravan was completely lost when I tried to access the underground garage earlier in this video. I did experience another bug where the initial scenario spawn didn't come in properly and it was all covered in fog. These are bugs, and I totally appreciate that these are actual issues that I've experienced. But when we look at the Steam Workshop page, well, to kind of explain my opinion here, every single person that's reported a bug, Mo has replied back to them and saying that it's being fixed. If we then look at the actual Steam Workshop pages themselves, this mod at the time of recording has been out for literally like 3 days, and there are like 24 updates already for this mod. I expect 24 updates from a mod that's been out for like 3 years and it's gone through several different phases of Rimworld. The attention to fixing this mod is immense, and I'd imagine these bugs that I've just mentioned are probably already fixed. I have full confidence that they're probably already fixed by the time you're watching this, because the mod creators clearly care, they clearly want to fix things, and they clearly know what they're doing. The bugs, the issues that I've had are probably completely redundant, honestly. And then how will this fit in with your gameplay? Well, like Save Our Ship 2, this mod completely overhauls what you're doing. You're not downloading this mod to play in the Tribal era. You're not downloading this mod to play in the Medieval era. This mod is just what this mod is, and it forces you to play within the kind of industrial era. So it might not be a good idea to start adding tribal mods to your mod pack, but you won't be doing that if you're playing with this mod like whatsoever. Because of the way this mod is structured, it kind of means you're playing with this mod and a couple of quality of life mods, and that's about it. The only issue that I can potentially see with the compatibility of your playstyles is that it means you can't really play Rimworld. Kinda. We do need some clarification, in my opinion. I think it'd be really handy if the developers here put on their Steam Workshop page just like, yeah, this disables raids, or yeah, you are still gonna have to like make a base, you'll still have to farm and make food. The compatibility section and the way this works with your playstyle, we just need a little bit more information on the Steam Workshop page as to like, are we still playing Rimworld? Like, this mod is just like, it changes in such a way that we don't know if we're even in Rimworld anymore, which is crazy to think, honestly. So for compatibility here, I'm going to give it 10 out of 10 again. I don't know if you can tell, I love this mod to pieces and it's just amazing. So next, let's move on, look at my mod recommendations to go with this mod. And like with my Save Our Ship 2 playthrough that I've done, and I have a mod list for, I barely used any mods in that playthrough and I had so much fun. The mod like this that completely overhauls gameplay and adds so much means you don't really need to play with any mods. So most of the mods that I'm going to be recommending here don't really add much content, and if they do, it's very specific. And very interestingly, one of the mods I've reviewed, it's a first for me because it's the only time I've ever seen this worthwhile. So to start with, we have EFT apparel, very on theme and definitely makes sense. Next, we have Rimunation Squared, just get even more weapons in the mix, which I can't see anything wrong with that. Next, we have Better Traders, so we can sell all the loot that we're getting, get more money, and we can progress even further. And drumroll please, Combat Extended. I am not a fan of Combat Extended, but this is the first time that I can see Combat Extending working extremely well within this mod. And the fact that these two are compatible is probably game-changing for you. And just for that, the experience that you'd have with this mod and Combat Extended is so unique. Now, yes, I haven't necessarily recommended the most amount of mods, and there aren't honestly that many I can recommend. But for a mod like this that is just doing so much, you don't need very many mods. And at the end of the day, that's the best way to be playing things. Have not too many mods, but it's changing your experience in such a way that you just don't need all these extra things, which is honestly perfect in my opinion. So mod recommendations, you've guessed it, it's another 10 out of 10. We have got a winner chicken dinner with this mod. So here we are at my conclusion, and as you can probably tell, this is a very highly rated mod. Me personally, I can already see this as the mod of the year for 2025 for Rimworld, and at the moment it's up there for me. I love Save Our Ship 2 and it has been updated to 1.5, but obviously that was released a few years ago and doesn't really count. This mod could 100% potentially be the best mod we will have in Rimworld this year, which is crazy to think, especially when we're just at the end of August here. We have so much longer to go for the rest of this year and so many more months for this mod to develop. For content, it received 10 out of 10. For quality, 10 out of 10. Balancing, 10 out of 10. Compatibility, 10 out of 10. My mod recommendation score, 10 out of 10. Giving it a channel first 50 out of 50, and our very first S-tiered mod. I can barely fault this mod at all. The faults that I can list at the top of my head is there are some spelling errors in the Steam Workshop page, and there's a couple of bugs that I know will already be fixed by the time you're watching this video, and that's it. Never have I been speechless when it comes to criticizing a mod, because there is so much been taken into account here, and I know that there's a larger team, a lot larger than most other mods, representing this mod, and I clap my hands if I could. I am blown away with what you've done. Full credits to you guys. Honestly, you all deserve the biggest of kisses and a big old cuddle, because full kudos to you. Definitely, for me personally, at this current time of recording, my mod of the year 2025, even beating the tractor mod, which I couldn't stop raving about and I was having dreams at for so long. If you have enjoyed today's mod review, consider liking, subscribing, make sure you tell your mum about me. I'll see you next time. Thank you.